Is it possible that we have reached the age of refinement in the foldable phone story? With the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4, Samsung apparently hasn't tried to reinvent the genre or radically alter the foldables design and display. Instead, this latest Galaxy Z device brings a number of small but welcome design enhancements over the Z Fold 3, plus a new processor and upgraded camera array. All of this adds up to a handset that's lighter and thinner than its predecessor and generally even better equipped to serve as a traditional 6.2-inch Android 12 handset that just happens to pack an expensive flexible 7.6-inch display inside. This is the do-everything device that presents few compromises. Yes, the Galaxy Z Fold 4 is, when folded, noticeably thicker than your average smartphone. It's nearly double the thickness of the Samsung Galaxy S22. And the cover screen is a little narrower than the displays on most Android handsets, but these are small prices to pay for a phone that's productivity friendly while being able to slip easily into a pocket when folded. Samsung has really leaned into productivity possibilities via an update to its One UI software. Now, in addition to supporting multiple apps simultaneously, up to 4 at a time on screen, including one floating window, you have a new customizable app dock at the bottom of the screen from which you can drag out apps to launch them. It even supports S Pen input, but more on that, yes, but with a big caveat detailer later. The cameras are excellent and familiar, with Samsung essentially borrowing the Samsung Galaxy S22's camera array and slapping it on the back of the Galaxy Z Fold 4. Do we wish that $1,799 handset came with the absolute best camera technology Samsung has to offer? Of course, but we don't think many people will miss the 10x zoom or 100x space zoom options. Power-wise, the Galaxy Z Fold 4 features the best mobile CPU Qualcomm currently has to offer, the Snapdragon 8 Plus Generation 1, backed by 12MB of RAM. This chip isn't quite powerful as Apple's A15 Bionic, but Qualcomm is closing the gap, and based on our testing, the chip has all the power you need for most typical tasks and enough headroom for more CPU-intensive ones like editing 8K video streams. This is also an Apple gaming device and a real pleasure to use when it comes to a good Netflix binge. It's an attractive handset both when it's closed and you are looking at the cover screen, and when unfolded into its larger tablet mode, because the hinge is less prominent than on the Z Fold 3. You can also fool yourself into believing that this is just another non-folding handset. Sure, the crease on the inside screen is still visible, and you will feel it when swiping your fingers along the display, but again, these are fair trade-offs for having a folding glass screen. We do have some concerns about battery life. The 4400 mAh battery makes it through a typical workday, but our tests put it at roughly 13 hours. That's nothing to sneeze at, but for a device of this size and with such an efficient chip, we were hoping for more. The reality is, though, that a tablet screen will eat more battery life than even the largest standard 6.8-inch smartphone screen. It's an expensive phone, especially if you go for more than the base 256GB of storage, although if deals show up further down the line, it will become a more attractive proposition. But the Galaxy Z Fold 4 makes it clear that foldables are here to stay and that Samsung is heavily invested in the form factor. Samsung unveiled the Galaxy Z Fold 4 during its August 10 Unpacked event, where it also introduced its other foldable update, the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 4, along with the Galaxy Watch 5 and Watch 5 Pro and the Galaxy Buds 2 Pro. The Galaxy Z Fold 4 went up for pre-order immediately after the launch with a release date of August 26. There are 3 color options: Grey, Phantom Black and Beige. Our review unit is a moody grey, as you can probably tell from the pictures. The price is a second clue. Beyond that foldable design, that the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4 isn't like other Android handsets. The starting price of $1,799 puts it out of reach for most smartphone buyers. Even Apple's top of the line iPhone 13 Pro Max starts at a more approachable $1,099, but that phone only has one screen and can't transform into a tablet. There are some extraordinary trade-in deals available, some of which cut the price of the handset by quite a bit. Our advice is don't dismiss the Galaxy Z Fold 4 out of the hand because of the price. First, figure out if it's the right phone for you, then weigh your deal options. Samsung clearly believes it has a pretty good foundational structure for its premier folding device, and that's why the Z Fold 4 isn't radically different from the Galaxy Z Fold 3. That said, there are actually lots of small build and design differences, some of which you can plainly see while others are hidden beneath the frame. Folded, the device is still 67.1mm wide, but the shape of the product has changed so that from certain angles the hinge is less noticeable. The handset is 155.1mm long, which is almost 3mm shorter than the Z Fold 3. This gives the device a more conventional phone shape rather than the odd-looking oblong shape of previous folds. More importantly, this is now a thinner and lighter device. Instead of the Galaxy Z Fold 3's 6.4mm thickness when unfolded, the table mode is now just 6.3mm thick. That's not a huge difference, but it also brings the weight down to 263 grams, 8 grams lighter than the Galaxy Z Fold 3. The buttons or ports are standard fare for a smartphone, but the folding design does mean the placement isn't typical. There is the SIM slot along the top edge, speaker and mic holes along one edge, a speaker grill, mic hole and USB-C port along the bottom, and on the other edge a volume rocker and power and sleep button that doubles as your fingerprint sensors, which happens to work quite nicely. I registered multiple fingers. The phone also supports Face ID biometrics, but you are warned that it's less secure than other methods. When folded, the Galaxy Z Fold 4 can feel a little thick and heavy in the hand compared to most other Android handsets. It's not uncomfortable though. Unfolded, this is a thin and light tablet. The main noticeable difference between it and, say, an iPad mini is that the bezel surrounding the screen has a tiny raised lip to keep the bendable screen covering in place and protected. The re-engineered hinge is a real highlight here. No longer does it stick out from the side of the phone when folded. Instead, it's hugging the frame thanks to a new hinge design that jettisoned the gears in favor of a flatter mechanical design. It looks great, and at least in the time we have been using this phone, it works smoothly. As you are bending the phone, it feels solid yet pliant, as if to reassure you, yes, this is what you are supposed to do with me. The frame is IPX8 rated, which means it will survive 30 minutes in 1 meter of water, but due to the hinge mechanics, it's not dust resistant. The Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4 is a 7.6-inch dynamic AMOLED display with 2176 x 1812 resolution, where the Z Fold 3 screen was 2208 x 1768 resolution. It's a nominal change that's mostly due to the updated chassis. It also supports an adaptive refresh rate of 1 to 120 Hz. The low end of the range is useful for saving battery life by not refreshing the screen when it's not needed, while the high end means smoother gameplay and video action. The defining feature of this screen is of course that it folds, and Samsung has done some re-engineering here. Under the strengthened ultra-thin flexible glass, Samsung has removed a metal plate which helps to make the phone thinner and lighter, and replaced it with a strong mesh. That's not stuff. What you can see and feel though is the crease. It shows up when the screen is dark, and if you run your finger across the screen you will feel it too. Generally it's unnoticeable when watching video, but you might occasionally detect a slightly darker band running through your Netflix selection. There is a camera on this main display, but it's easily hidden by a tiny disc of pixels that the phone can turn on and off. When it's time to use the camera, the punch-out hole suddenly appears, highlighted by an illuminated ring. Like the crease, you usually won't even notice this little circle when it's not illuminated. but on some brighter images and scenes it can be visible. Overall, this is still an excellent screen with all the real estate you need to do everything from taking pictures to putting the device in flex mode, basically bent into an L shape, which lets you use one half as a keyboard and the other as your screen laptop style. The cover screen has also gotten an upgrade. It's still a 6.2-inch dynamic AMOLED screen with a 2316 into 904 resolution compared to the Z Fold 3's 2268 into 832 resolution, but now it's 2.7mm wider than the cover screen on the Galaxy Z Fold 3. It also has an adaptive refresh rate, though in this case it's 48Hz to 120Hz. As in the main screen, there is a punch hole cutout for the selfie camera, although this one isn't hidden with magic pixels. Thanks to the new larger dimensions, this is now a genuinely usable and useful screen. It's not multitasking friendly, but it's good for email, web browsing, chat apps, social media, and as a viewfinder for the camera array on the back. Overall, we are pleased with the updated cover display, which gives the whole device a more traditional handset look and feel. The cover screen has also gotten an upgrade. It's still a 6.2-inch dynamic AMOLED screen, but now it's 2.7mm wide. The cover screen has also gotten an upgrade. It's still a 6.2-inch dynamic AMOLED screen with 2316 into 904 resolution compared to the Z Fold 3's 2268 into 832 resolution, but now it's 2.7mm wider than the cover screen on the Galaxy Z Fold 3. It also has an adaptive refresh rate, though in this case it's 48Hz to 120Hz. As on the main screen, there is a punch hole cutout for the selfie camera, although this one isn't hidden with magic pixels. Thanks to the new larger dimensions, this is now a genuinely usable and useful screen. It's not multitasking friendly, but it's good for email, web browsing, chat apps, social media, and as a viewfinder for the camera array on the back. Overall, we are pleased with the updated cover display, which gives the whole device a more traditional handset look and feel. As with the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 3, which used the Samsung Galaxy S21's camera array, the Z Fold 4 adapts its main camera array from the Galaxy S22. It has the same sensors underneath, though they are backed by a slightly more powerful CPU here and the same lenses. There is also a selfie camera on the cover screen and a low-grade selfie camera under the large main screen. Here is the full list of cameras: 12 megapixel ultra wide with 123-degree field of vision, f2.2 aperture, 50 megapixel wide f1.8 aperture, 10 megapixel telephoto with f2.4 aperture, and cover has 8 megapixel f2.2 aperture, and main screen has 4 megapixel f1.8 aperture focus length. All of these cameras are quite good, especially the triple array, matching the expectations we built after reviewing the Samsung Galaxy S22. The light gathering capabilities are exceptional. The colors pop maybe a tiny bit too much, but that's Samsung for you. And the portrait mode is exquisite. 3x optical zoom is effective, and the digitally assistant and optically and digitally stabilized space zoom is also quite good. Low light and night photography are also impressive. Slight disappointment sets in though when you consider that your $1,799 folding phone doesn't have the best cameras Samsung has to offer. You will find those on the stellar Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra, so there is no 108 megapixel main camera or a 10x optical zoom here, and space zoom tops out at 30x. The selfie camera on the cover screen is good, and the one on the main screen is better than serviceable. We used it for photos, and in a Google Meet session, there are lots of video recording options all the way up to 8K 60 FPS, although that's only useful if you have a good 8K TV to display it. 4K video looks great, and you can also record in slow-mo. The camera app offers quick access to a wide array of shooting options, including Pro Mode, which lets you control settings such as shutter speed and white balance. It's a bit odd that the Samsung's foldable line now has slightly better CPUs than its S22 flagship line, but such is the world of silicon and smartphone timing. We are happy that the Galaxy Z Fold 4 has the Qualcomm's top-of-the-line Snapdragon 8 Plus Generation 1 CPU, as it needs all the power it can get given the multitasking gymnastics it's capable of. Geekbench 5 benchmarks bear out the new CPU's somewhat snappier performance compared to the 8th generation one. It's not a huge difference, but it feels to us that the phone's ability to edit 8K 60 FPS video at once in Adobe Premiere Rush speaks to that kick, and it doesn't hurt that the Samsung has backed up the chip with 12 GB of RAM. The raw numbers still don't beat Apple's A15 Bionic, but that's immaterial. There's more than enough power on tap here for all your cover and main screen tasks. Samsung does an excellent job of integrating its key One UI feature and apps into full experience while still keeping this out of the way of the stock Android Google apps you really want. But we are particularly impressed with the effortless handoff between the cover screen and the main flexible display. The phone swaps screens instantly, so you can move the same app between the main and cover displays without waiting for it to reload. It can work like a normal phone with the cover screen, a tablet with the main screen, or something in between if you fold the screen to a 90-degree angle. The Galaxy Z Fold 4 knows if it's bent at a 90-degree angle, and if you are in an app like Word, puts the split keyboard on the bottom half of the display. It's not a perfect experience since the tapping in the crease is best avoided, but it works. It's not unlike using a very small Android laptop. The app dock not only lets you drag and drop apps and keep ones you use often in the dock, but it can remember app groups and let you instantly access and reopen them with a tap. Very smart. The Galaxy Z Fold 4 supports Samsung's S Pen, but not just any S Pen. When we tested the S22 Ultra S Pen and tapped it on the screen, the Z Fold 4 recognized it instantly, but then popped up a rather scary message that said you can only use S Pen specifically designed for the Z Fold screen. We did not have one of those lying around to test with. We spent a very busy day with Galaxy Z Fold 4, doing everything from video conference calls to word processing, playing games, editing video, watching Netflix shows, and sometimes doing all of these things at once. We also watched as the battery life drained, perhaps a little faster than expected. At 4400 mAh, this isn't a tiny battery, but it does have to do the work of powering two screens, though not simultaneously. The battery lasted approximately 13 hours, which is pretty good, though we would have liked to have seen more. Still, getting that far is probably a testament to the 8 Plus Generation 1's power management capabilities. The phone supports fast, wired and wireless charging, and at one point we added back 30% of power in just 15 minutes using a Samsung 65-watt grand charger, which is not included. The phone can also perform wireless power sharing duties. However, I could only get that to work with the Samsung Galaxy Buds 2 Pro case and not with the Galaxy S22. Let's not forget that this is a 5G phone. Our model was running on T-Mobile's network in the US, which has the pretty good 5G coverage, but the speed was as you would expect all over the map. Still, it was good enough to stream HD quality Netflix on my train ride home. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, feel free to share it to friends and keep watching Best Buy to get your top-notch day-to-day commodities.